Hello, everybody. Welcome to Social Work 668. This week, we are going to focus on needs assessment. And the needs assessment assignment is our first major assignment for this class. So just as a quick reminder, we have our needs assessment, we have our logic model, we have our final program evaluation. So our first major assignment is kind of coming around to us. So really want to just get a chance to dive deeper into that assignment and go through what is really a needs assessment and what is the purpose. So I first want to start out with some celebratory fireworks. You've made it through the first 2 weeks. This class is really soaring. People are on target, turning their things in every week. I really believe that effective communication is key. Please continue to talk to me. No question is too big or too small. So please continue to reach out. And I've really enjoyed getting to know each and every single one of you. When communicating, just some quick reminders, make sure you put Social Work 668 in the subject line. And that's because I teach across our curriculum, and I just want to really be able to situate your question within the class, within program evaluation. If you read an email from me, if you could just send me a quick gotcha email or a quick, okay, got it, thanks, just so I know that the full cycle of communication is complete. If any of you are struggling with soft chalk, make sure you hit the finish button after each question. That will keep you moving along and make sure your actual responses to questions are submitted and getting to me instead of being left blank. At times, students might not see what I have embedded in the lesson. If that is happening to you, see tips in terms of the Start Here button in our Social Work 668 Blackboard site. It also could be an issue that you might not have an updated plugins or browser or Java, but if you see a blank chalkboard outline or any sort of white square, there should be text in there or an image or a picture. So that is when you should be concerned that something isn't going right with your system. Maybe there needs to be an update to make sure you really do see something embedded in every single slide throughout the soft chalk lesson. And just a friendly reminder that all lessons should be completed every week at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time. So 1 minute before midnight. All right, so any technology issues across the board, just continue to reach out to me. Some common ones in the past, I don't recommend Firefox as a browser. I tend to use Google when operating soft chalk. Firefox might actually be preventing you from seeing an image in soft chalk. So just a friendly reminder to really check and see what browser you're using in case you run into any tech issues. Just a quick session to recap from last year. I've really enjoyed reading your journal articles, which focus on not only ethical issues in program evaluation, but also the articles that you've reviewed and integrated into your journal. You're really moving along. And last week, you were really tasked at looking at standards and principles related to anti-racism, related to anti-oppressive frameworks, related to cultural competency and community engagement, and really juxtaposing that with the NASW Code of Ethics and seeing how the two converge. And you all did a really effective job of that last week. So thank you for your hard work. This slide is really just a suggestion on how I think it's best to approach this course. This course is reading intensive in terms of your learning. However, I don't assign a lot of reading because the readings that I do assign are really important in terms of you being able to fulfill your assignment for that week, either like a journal or a blog or a discussion board, but also kind of feed into the larger assignments of the needs assessment, the logic model, and the program evaluation. So I recommend that you do your reading first because the soft chalk lessons do an overview of the readings. So if you do the reading prior to completing the tasks in Blackboard, which includes the soft chalk lessons and the participation points that week, then you're not going to get kind of caught with a question or a quiz popper or a reflection that you're like, oh, wait, I don't know where that is in the Royce book or the assigned article for that week. So really the purpose of the soft chalk is just to really review the reading that you've already done and kind of emphasizing key points. Make sure you're turning in your assignments on time. That is 11:59 p.m. This is pulled straight from your syllabus. So review the assignments button in Blackboard carefully for due dates. And we're going to cover our first one this week with needs assessment. I'm also going to be posting a more in-depth video about your needs assessment assignment. Although I have tight deadlines for this class, I also understand that crises occur within all of our lives, and this world right now has no shortage of crises and situations that are challenging pop up each semester. So please communicate me and let me know if whatever you need an extension. If you haven't communicated with me, then your grade is lowered 2 points for each day, unless you've contacted me ahead of time and let me know about some special circumstances, and then we can kind of rearrange the due date. So again, just kind of reemphasizing that communication is key. So moving on and thinking about our needs assessment. So why do we do needs assessments as the first part of program evaluation? And so this kind of journey into program evaluation really takes you through each aspect of a program evaluation process. So our first task is to really understand what needs of this organization or of this program need to be met through developing an intervention that we can then move forward and evaluate. So this might seem overwhelming, but I just want us to kind of dial back for a minute and think about working within social work at the micro level. So let's say you're a therapist working with a child for the first time, and the child is a part of your population of focus within your program. The first step is to really assess the child. So this is where a needs assessment comes in. You start with a psychosocial assessment where you're obtaining information directly from the child. And throughout your assessment, you're learning that the child is having difficulty in school. This is where you want to shift and look at the environment the child is in. So our person and environment practice. You may find it effective to talk to teachers to understand the behavior in the school environment. You also might want to interview parents to understand behavior in the home environment. This is all part of like a comprehensive assessment process. So you want to look at multiple sources and piece together information to understand the child and the environment that they're in. So similar to program evaluation, we first really need to understand the needs of the program. So what are the challenges that the program is currently going through? That could be at the workforce level in terms of social workers, that could be at the client level. So that's where we really start in terms of needs assessment. And it's very similar to what we do in terms of micro assessment. The other part of thinking about this more at a macro level is that from this example, you can just see that you are assessing needs all the time when working with clients. That's kind of what we do in many aspects of social work practice. The same skills are used for macro practice. You may work with a specific population on a micro level, which is considered a population of focus. Remember, in this class, we don't use stakeholders, we use population of focus based on our health equity language. As you assess, you consider multiple factors. The needs assessment of an organization or community would be the same. You will interview key members of the organization. The difference is looking closely at the organization. And then assessing the organization, you will identify how it's impacting the population of focus. You would start from a broad perspective and then focus in a micro lens. So let's say we are noticing this child in the school system is struggling. For a program evaluation, we would actually want to focus on the school as being the program. And that is what we want to assess. So let's say from that point for this class, let's say you're working with a school, you would then want to interview key workers at that school to understand what needs are currently being unfulfilled as the organization currently stands. So this is sort of needs assessment. So why do we do needs assessment? We do them because we really need to understand how to develop an intervention that will adequately address the organization or program's need. So it's important to assess needs at any program as well as the community when needed. So what are you wanting to know about your chosen program or community? So please review the needs assessment assignment under the assignment tab in Blackboard. I've also done a more in-depth video which takes you step by step through the needs assessment. And I've also put up the guidelines for the assignment, a rubric for the assignment, and an example from a former exceptional student. So your interview guidelines is really what are going to be submitted in a journal this week. So let's take a look at what those are. So our first step in doing a needs assessment is actually developing an interview guide. Sometimes it's also known as an interview schedule. So what we're going to do for that is this week's soft chalk is really going to help us understand not only needs assessment, but also kind of aiming us at like what kinds of questions do we need to ask for in order to adequately assess needs. So we quickly, and this is one of the biggest hurdles of the class early on in terms of tasks you have to complete as students, you need to identify project partners. So I would say 95% of my students in this class are successful by quickly partnering with their workplace or their practicum agency or an organization that's really close to them that they volunteer at. And they do a workforce level needs assessment and intervention because it's much easier to reach out to workers to interview them rather than clients for a number of reasons. I also think it's more in line with the ethics of this because clients don't really get anything out of participating in the needs assessment. So it's more clear cut, I think, if you focus on workforce intervention. So you need your project partners. If you're focusing on an organization, you need to identify at least 3 project partners to interview. If you're focusing on a community, you can identify at least 3 project partners within the community who provide the services. So there's some examples that we provide for you too. You want to also consider others who influence the group, such as partners who could provide a service to the group. All right. So this is long story short, you do not need to interview, let's say 3 social workers. You could interview, let's say a manager, you could interview a social worker, and you could interview a counselor. So they can be people of 3 different positions, but they all have to be involved in the milieu of services that are being provided to the population of focus. So first, service recipients. If you decide to include a service recipient, please provide a brief description as to why they were chosen to be interviewed and any relevant background in history. So this would be included included in terms of maybe one person who is a client or receiving services. You do not want to include names. So this should be confidential and de-identified. Do not provide a student selected code per person, such as A, B, and C. I usually like to ask my participants when I'm doing needs assessments to give themselves a pseudonym or a code name that's meaningful to them. You could also include service providers, so identify the individual or their credentials or educational background, provide a brief description of why they were chosen to be interviewed, or others. Lastly, you could identify an individual, let's say that's a policymaker, let's say that's a community member who maybe might not be a client, but knows or is involved in the organization in some capacity. That could be a physician. It could be someone who works in a spiritual community related to the population of focus. But make sure you provide a rationale as to why you are including each one of your participants that you will interview. So again, just to recap, 3 participants need to be interviewed. So the next step, which is pretty big as well. So we have to identify the first 3 people we're going to interview, and we only are required to interview 3 people. We then have to develop interview guide questions. So please consult with me if you are unclear. So this is basically an interview guide that you will use to engage research-informed practice. So you first should conduct a literature review that identifies between 5 to 7 peer-reviewed journal articles published within the last 10 years that focus on your participant population. This literature will help inform your questions as well as your findings. So you are not being asked to summarize the literature you have collected, but rather critically analyze and apply this information to inform your interview guide questions, guide and support your findings. So it is not appropriate for this class to just really pull questions out of thin air, but you want to make sure you are asking questions that are kind of grounded in existing literature. After you develop your questions, refer back to step 3 in your interview assignment, in your needs assessment assignment, which is really providing the rationale for your needs assessment. So this literature review will really do 2 things. It will help you kind of understand the background literature related to the topic, really if any other needs assessment have been done out there in the world on the population of focus. It will also help point you in the right direction in terms of what kinds of questions to ask. I would also recommend trying to find articles that take a qualitative approach, because sometimes they actually include their interview guides, so you can get a sense of how and why people perceive their needs to look like a certain way. Also, reviewing soft check lesson 3 will be imperative to developing all of this. So the needs assessment complete assignment is due on session 6. We have 3 more weeks, so that's October 3rd. Assignment should be submitted by Blackboard by 11:59, and this assignment is worth 40 points. Next week, we're going to focus more on qualitative methods in evaluation, which I'm super excited about because I love qualitative methods. But our first assignment of this class, the needs assessment assignment, is a qualitative data collection and analysis assignment. It will be the only assignment throughout this class that we are actually collecting data for. When we switch over to doing our logic model and our needs assessment, our logic model and our program evaluation, those 2 will be really proposals that are based in the data collection that we are doing for our needs assessment assignment. So this is really like a heavy lift on the beginning end to collect data in the form of 3 interviews with participants in our population of focus and really identifying a program we want to partner with for this class. And then we will move forward to think about this class more aspirationally in terms of if I were to address an intervention, or if I were to implement an intervention, how would I ground this in the needs that I'm learning about in the community? And then we create a plan to evaluate that intervention that is proposed. So again, this is our heavy lift for data collection for this class. And please reach out to me if you have any questions about needs assessment, about interview guides, about reaching out to population of focus. I am here to communicate with you. So keep that communication coming. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your week, and I will see you back again week 4. Take care. Bye.